there's two types of belly fat, right? So we have the stuff we can pinch, that's the subcutaneous, and then we have the stuff that's really deep inside. There crowds around the organs, that's the visceral fat. So that's belly fat, but it's kind of working at growing deep inside and pushing the belly out. Why, when we all know what to do, basically, do we not do it? In order for you to stick with your plan and make changes that are going to last a lifetime, your plan has to be easy for you to follow, it has to be enjoyable, and it has to be effective. It really does come down to just eating more whole foods. It will have ripple effects that really help you. For one thing, it helps to control cravings. You're not on the blood sugar roller coaster that we get on when we're on eating a high sugar diet. Found that people that do stick with healthy lifestyle and create a lifetime improvement in their health have three factors in common. First,
hey there, welcome to the Happy Habit Podcast. I'm Matthew. I'm here every week talking health, well-being and self-improvement. And if after this episode you'd like to show your support, well then you can like, subscribe and share with other people who you think might enjoy this content too. Now today I talk with Dr Becky Gillaspy, who you may know from her YouTube channel and her numerous books. We talk belly fat, insulin resistance and inflammation and how they are all linked. What are the 3 E's that Dr Gillaspy says are vital for weight loss and healthy eating? How do you stop eating sugary foods, especially at night time? How best to intermittent fast? And is LDL something we should be concerned about? And lots more besides. What exactly is the relationship between belly fat or visceral fat, insulin resistance, and that chronic inflammation, which can contribute to that metabolic dysfunction I mentioned?
it's a vicious cycle. So insulin resistance that may be brought on from a poor diet or the SAD diet, standard American diet, can lead to an increase in visceral fat. And to just backstep that a second, visceral fat, belly fat, there's two types of belly fat, right? So we have the stuff we can pinch, that's the subcutaneous, and then we have the stuff that's really deep inside. There crowds around the organs, that's the visceral fat. So that's belly fat, but it's kind of working at growing deep inside and pushing the belly out. And so that is what we're talking about here. That's the dangerous fat. It's much more metabolically active. It releases free fatty acids into the bloodstream that are very inflammatory. So you get this whole vicious cycle. So if you're eating diets that has a lot of inflammatory factors to it, it's our very refined, very processed foods that make up 70% of our food in our grocery stores. If that's where your diet is focused, well, it's going to lead to problems with always elevated blood sugar, always elevated insulin. That creates a situation that's open for insulin resistance, which is a precursor to diabetes. That also is going to encourage that deeper fat to be put into place. Well, now you have more deep fat, now you have more visceral fat. It's also going to its pro-inflammatory factors that are getting released into your body. So it really starts with the diet and then picks up momentum and just carries itself out into a more and more destructive loop.
In ever decreasing circles, as they say. Yeah, I noticed on one of your videos you spoke about the fundamental elements, the 3 E's of weight loss. Can you give us a rundown on this? Because I just thought this was so fun the way you described it and just so succinct as well.
This is a cornerstone of everything I teach and probably a lot of what you do too, as far as getting habits formed, right? So it's the 3 E's, and I'll back up to kind of how this all got started. Years ago, I took a job as a freelance science writer. We would create scripts for videos that would be educational videos for all the way from grade school up through college students. And one of the things that I was tasked to present was why we don't comply with everyday health factors that we know are beneficial to us, right? So these are things like don't smoke, adequate exercise, eat a nutritious, balanced diet, get plenty of sleep, right? We all know these things are good for us. We've learned that when we were in second grade. But the problem was no one was complying with them. No one would follow through. So there was, through my research, I came across this symposium of doctors that were trying to figure out this exact problem. Why, when we all know what to do, basically, do we not do it? And what they came up with was that it's actually not that we don't know what to do, it's that we know too much. It's all of this information overload. And everybody can relate to this. You jump in your car, you get the health minute that says, eat more fruit, right? And then you get to work and you're talking with a coworker and they say, well, the worst thing that you can do is eat too much fruit, right? And so then you go to Dr. Google and you put in, should I be eating fruit? Well, you get the same contrary information. Yes, no. So we end up with information overload. We just basically throw our hands up in the air and we go, you know what? Let's call the pizza guy. We'll deal with this problem tomorrow. So I bring that up with my 3 E's because of this, that symposium by those doctors. They not only came up with what the problem was, they also came up with what the solution was. And they found that people that do stick with healthy lifestyle and create a lifetime improvement in their health have 3 factors in common. First, they follow a pretty simple plan, right? It's not they don't take on a plan that overtakes their lives and takes up every aspect and every minute of their lives. There has to be something enjoyable about what they do, right? We just simply do not stick with things that make us miserable. And thirdly, they had to be doing things that were constantly giving them input that what they were doing mattered. It was being effective. I just simplified those aspects to the 3 E's. In order for you to stick with your plan and make changes that are going to last a lifetime, your plan has to be easy for you to follow. It has to be enjoyable, and it has to be effective.
I smiled when I saw another one of your videos on Charles Duhigg's book about habits. I read it a couple of years ago. It's a great book, and I have to highly recommend that. I'll pop a link to it in the show notes for this episode. But I think he was somebody who had an impression on you too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So he talks a lot about keystone habits. And what a keystone habit is one change that you focus on that will have a ripple effect through the rest of your lifestyle, exercise, diet, and things like that. And it is a fantastic way to approach, especially for somebody who feels this information overwhelm. Just block out other things and follow one keystone habit. And I'll give an example. I'll give you 2 examples of a keystone habit. So the first one is maybe a little bit easier if you just are feeling really overwhelmed. And that would be to just have part of your daily diet be one large salad during the day. So one of your meals is a salad. Salad works great as a vehicle for healthy proteins and fats. Those foods are very satisfying. Even the volume from the leafy greens and the non-starchy vegetables help to fill the stomach. So you're going to have even more long-term hunger satisfaction from eating a salad a day. And it's going to bring in nutrients that are going to help your body to keep your blood sugar down, keep your insulin down, and things like that. So if you have someone who's watching this, or we have someone who's watching this, and they are really struggling, that can be a keystone habit. Because when you start now focusing on every day, you wake up in the morning, you know you're going to have that salad, you know what you're going to put on it for, proteins and fat and healthy fats, avocados, salmon, hard-boiled eggs, poultry, chicken, something like that. Those types of foods add on to a salad are going to make it very hunger satisfying and give you some good health benefits. But if you know that you're going to have that, it just gives you a different feel about the day. It's like, I am taking a step that I know is somewhat significant that is going to be able to, have a ripple effect. So you might find that you just do simple little things, like you park farther out in the parking lot to walk into the store and things like that. Another keystone habit that I'm very big on is 0 added sugar for the day. So make that your intention for the day. Is your Keystone habit is I'm going to avoid added sugar. And how I classify that, if people want to follow this, is that if you look at the ingredient list and sugar is listed as one of the first 3 ingredients, don't eat it. So, a food can have like little amount of sugar if it's way down on the ingredient list, but you don't want to have it if it's one of the first 3 ingredients. This is a very powerful Keystone habit because it takes more focus. It takes a lot of intent because we live in a sugar-filled world. So it really opens your eyes to what is in the foods that you normally eat. And also, you will notice that when you're off of sugar, it will have ripple effects that really help you. For one thing, it helps to control cravings. You're not on the blood sugar roller coaster that we get on when we're eating a high sugar diet. It helps you, obviously, you're going to be, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but you do lose weight typically when you are eating less sugar. So if that is a goal, it just has that effect, and absolutely beneficial for controlling blood sugar, which is another thing that a lot of people are looking to control naturally through their diet.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned sugar because I just wanted to make a reference to one of your books, A Zero Sugar 1 Month, which talks about quitting sugar. And you mentioned already, sugar's in everything. I spoke with another expert a couple of weeks ago about sugar being in mayonnaise, for example. And people don't realize just how ubiquitous sugar is. You're a proponent of the low carbohydrate diet. Part of that, obviously, is trying to reduce the amount of refined sugar in our diets. How do we negotiate that so very difficult landscape whereby there's hidden sugar in everything, and you would almost need to have a science degree to figure out what versions of sugar are in your meals and in your products that you buy, because there are so many different names for sugar today. So what advice would you have to help people to negotiate that landscape?
Yeah, it's a big problem, and is it intentional on the other, on the side of food manufacturers? Who knows? I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. It is just literally the world that we live in right now. You're right. Sugar goes by many different aliases. Dextrose is a big maltodextrin. Glucose might be mentioned. Sucrose is thrown in there. So if it's on the ingredient list, that's basically stating that there's sugar in there, and you want to avoid it. So how do you do that when you don't memorize a list of 20 different aliases and then have to go and look at every single ingredient list? Well, it really does come down to just eating more whole foods. The less foods that you buy out of a box, much less chance that you're going to be having added sugar. And it really does come down to that. One of the reasons I really enjoy low carb dieting for myself, and I like to put out there as an idea for people, is that it really doesn't take anything to follow a low carb diet other than shopping differently at the grocery store. Put different foods in your grocery, in your grocery cart, and you can turn your diet from a high carb diet to a low carb diet. How do you do that? Well, you stay out of those aisles that have the potato chips, the cereal, the cookies, and you go, but you've probably heard this before, but it is true, a little bit more around the periphery, right? So go through the produce aisle, pick up your non-starchy vegetables and some fruit. Go to the meat aisle. You can end in the dairy aisle and pick up some foods there as well. These are the foods that you're going to be eating on a low carb diet. You just leave those boxes at the store.
Common sense advice, really, I suppose, at the end of the day. Just stick to what's natural. And no, I completely agree. I want to ask you specifically about intermittent fasting and the difference between that and the benefits of that compared to something like time-restricted eating. Are these one and the same, or are they variations of a theme? Or can you clarify exactly what the benefits and downsides to these are?
Yeah, intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating. I think we see time-restricted eating more in the research. They've become synonymous, I think, with most people through just learning off of the internet. Time restricted eating is probably is the more accurate term, I would say. And if you just think about that, you are restricting your eating window to a period of time throughout the day. Intermittent fasting it's the same thing. You're still restricting it, but just I would, at this point, from the majority of people, they are used interchangeably. In my book, that's okay. It's just a semantics type of a thing. But intermittent fasting goes hand in hand with low carb dieting. And I'm a proponent of both, but I also do both of them in my life because they do follow the 3 E's, right? Easy to follow, enjoyable, and effective. I'll just single out intermittent fasting for that. Easy to follow. Well, it's easy to follow, right? So I'm going to start eating here, I'm going to end eating here, and I'm not going to eat in between here, right? So it's easy to follow. Enjoyable, eating is enjoyable. No one's going to deny that eating is enjoyable. It's a boredom breaker. I get those things, but it's enjoyable to not be so addicted to food and needing to feel like you have to be eating every moment of the day. And I actually wrote a book on intermittent fasting, and in there, one of the things I started with was the fact that we as a society eat for, I believe it's 15 hours a day. There's literally 11 eating occasions that go on in an average person's day. And we think, oh, that can't be possible. But when we think about drinking a soda, just picking up and drinking a soda during the day or as you're walking somewhere, if we think about, just picking up a piece of candy, we have eating occasions all throughout the day. Intermittent fasting makes you conscious of that, brings it into a shorter period of time. That is then effective because that time away from taking in calories and nutrients gives your digestive system a break. It also allows your blood sugar to stabilize. That stabilizes your insulin. Insulin is nicknamed the fat-storing hormone for a reason. When it is high, you're in fat-storing mode. When you bring it down just naturally through intermittent fasting or low-carb dieting, it allows for the body to release fat.
While we're on the subject of that kind of 24-hour period, you've said before that we tend to accumulate or ingest most of our calories after 6 o'clock in the evening when it's most dangerous, because literally we're most sedentary at that time of the day. We're sat in front of the television on the sofa. So how can we stop ingesting so many of our calories after 6 p.m? Do we have to be really disciplined about eating in the morning, in the afternoon, and then having that cutoff point and restricting our calorie intake then after tea time or in the evening times?
That is the time we ingest most of our calories. And if someone just thinks about that, it's really true. You're sitting in front of the TV, you turn the TV on, your next thought is, what can I eat while I'm watching this? So does it require discipline? Yes, it does at the start, because you have most likely trained your body to do what I just said there, right? Turn on the TV, your next thought goes, what can I eat, right? So you have to work with yourself for a period of time, and when you are going through that transition and getting rid of that just habitual type of behavior. The thing that I work on, and this could be used as a keystone habit as well, is 3 hours before bed, stop eating. And that has become somewhat of the established period as far as allowing yourself the metabolism to go to sleep. That 3-hour period of fasting allows your blood sugar and insulin levels to lower, so that while you're sleeping, you're not in a fat storing mode, right? You are able to release fat and that's the benefit. So 3 hours before bed, stop eating. So how do you go about that? Well, the first and most important thing is to eat foods that aren't stimulating your appetite. And that is these 70% of our processed foods. They are manufactured to include the trifecta, right? The added sugars, the vegetable oils, or the fats, and they just stimulate our appetite. And if we are eating those for dinner, it's going to be harder for you to not eat in those evening hours. What you want to eat is more of a low carb diet where they're slowly getting into your bloodstream, releasing sugar that's energy over a period of time. So dinner, instead of being a pizza or pasta, would be more like a meat entree with a side of a low starch vegetable like broccoli, cauliflower, things of that sort.
You mentioned the trifecta there of glucose and vegetable oils. The third part of that trifecta is flour. Talk to me about the downsides of ingesting flour.
Refined flours are just as easy to absorb into our bloodstream, so they're going to have the negative effects on the bloodstream that we don't want, and blood sugar. And the refined flours are what we find in breaded fast food products that will also be with, fried in the vegetable oil, highly salted. So you're getting that insatiable, I want to eat more type of a feeling. One of the things I teach as far as getting yourself into healthy habits is none is easier than some, because you'll notice when you eat these more addictive foods that just takes like one bite and you think, oh, I'm going to eat this entire thing and I hope there's more after that. Highly addictive. A lot of times when you're starting into intermittent fasting, your body remembers that this is a time that we normally eat and I would really like to eat. So it kind of turns up your hunger. If you can just remind yourself, none is easier than some. If I don't eat right now, I will actually have an easier time making it to my time frame. And the time frame really for intermittent fasting too, a lot of people want to jump into like daily fasts and things like that. You need to work with your body. Your body likes status quo. It likes you to do the same thing over and over again. It doesn't have to think. So start with a 12-hour fast. Simply 12 hours, use the time that you're sleeping to your advantage. So 3 hours before bed, stop eating, and then go to the next 12 hours. So if that is, 8 o'clock at night, then don't start eating until 8 o'clock in the morning. Get yourself programmed to that, and then slowly increase that. 16-8 is a standard for intermittent fasting, meaning that your eating window is 8 hours of the day, and you're fasting the remaining 16 hours of the day. But you want to, work up to that so that you're not fighting against your body. You're working with your body, not fighting against it.
Now, I know your husband's family have a history of heart disease, and he started the ketogenic diet back in 2017. And at that time, you were very mindful of his LDL cholesterol levels. But you now believe that LDL cholesterol has been vilified and has been frowned upon unnecessarily so. So I want to get your take on cholesterol, that whole picture, because people seem to be intimidated by any discussion involving the word cholesterol.
What I do think that we have to be a little bit more conscious of is looking at LDL as the single causative factor of heart disease. In fact, I don't know if you've ever interviewed Dr. David Diamond. He was involved with a study back in 2022, just a couple of years ago, that looked at causative factors of cardiovascular disease. And there were 13 markers that they identified. A low-carb diet was found to be beneficial for 12 of those 13. The outlier, LDL cholesterol. And we're talking, and yet we put all of our eggs in that basket, right? So we tend to disregard those other 12 factors. And we're talking about things like HbA1c, blood sugar, very important with the overall health of your body. We're talking about triglycerides, just LDL particles. We're talking about inflammation, which is really if you can just take everything else away, I think inflammation is paramount to better health. Lowering your rate of inflammation in your body, and you're going to solve so many long-term problems. So that's the thing with LDL cholesterol. I don't dismiss it, but it's one element. And, we have a powerful drug to lower LDL cholesterol. And so a lot of attention gets put on that. When you have a certain hammer, then everything kind of looks like a nail.
So it's too reductive then to focus solely on LDL cholesterol. It's far too simplistic.
Well, in my opinion, yes, it is. And then there are studies that you don't hear about that have a different view of LDL cholesterol. Back in 2016, there was a systematic review done so it took other studies that had already been done and used those participants to, come up with new analysis. These are nice studies because then they give you a large cohort of people, right? So this review looked at 68,000 individuals, and it found that, and these were older individuals, it found that those with the highest LDL levels lived the longest. So because LDL gets so much attention, we don't hear about these studies, and we therefore then don't even take a look at them. I wish we did. I wish there was that balance that, this study comes out, but let's balance it with this one.
Moving from LDL cholesterol to fruit, you mentioned it briefly earlier. To eat fruit or not eat fruit? That is the question. And I ask you this because I spoke with Dr. Annette Bosworth a few weeks ago, and she ascribes to the ketogenic diet also, but she would eat very, very little fruit because of that impact on her blood sugar levels, etc. And that offsets the production of ketones. And so I want to hear your stance on the consumption of fruit, because people love eating fruit. And then there's the argument then that the fruit that we eat today is so loaded with sugar and fructose, etc., that it's not even natural. And again, that boosts our blood sugar levels. So what are your thoughts?
It's probably one of the things when you talk about going on a ketogenic diet that people want to know about is fruit. I get a lot of questions about it. And here's the thing, so I actually follow a low carb diet, not a keto diet. So what's the difference there? Well, it's the amount of carbohydrates that I allow into my diet. So generally speaking, and this would be for a very good metabolically healthy person who's very active, 50 total grams of carbohydrates and below it, you're in the keto range. A lot of people will need to go lower than that to produce ketones, but low carb then is about 50 total grams to all the way up to 125, which depending on what your goal is, that might be a little bit high for you. I fall in that range. And the benefit of being in a low carb range is that I can add some lower starch vegetables. I can even add some starchy vegetables, and I can add some fruit into my diet. Is it right for everyone? It unfortunately depends on what your goal is and where your body metabolism is. If you would like to just, improve your diet, you want to reach some goals like weight loss and things like that, but you're willing to kind of work with your body over a period of time, there is a place for fruit. Are fruits created equal? Absolutely not. Berries, lemons, limes are very good lower carb choices, and you can really get a lot of enjoyment out of those, whereas your bananas and grapes are much more high in the natural sugars. So I don't like to completely exclude fruit if someone wants to follow a low carb diet. Even in plans that I put together for keto, I put some berries and things like that in there just to allow some of that variety. So that's kind of my position on fruit. I think that if, depending on what your goal is or whatever, I think it's good to find ways to bring that in. Here again, it's the 3 E's, right? It's easy for us to follow. It's enjoyable, and it can be effective. You just have to know your limits.
Talk to me about your use of stoppers when it comes to tracking weight loss and healthy eating goals.
Yeah, so stoppers, maybe not the most original name, but it's very effective name. It is something a word that I use to describe any food activity item that will separate you from eating. We talked about none is easier than some. Well, the thing is that anything that you eat will stimulate your appetite. That's probably one of those things that we've had with us for eons and eons and generations because food wasn't always abundant. So you eat something and your hormonal changes say, okay, let's keep eating. Stoppers disrupt that. And once we're done eating, we know we've had our nutritious meal. We know we've had enough. There's that thought inside, boy, I could just have a little bit of something. If I could just have something, just a little bite of dessert or something like that. Stoppers change the taste in your mouth, or they take a long time to consume. So they allow you to naturally move away, giving your stomach time for your brain to tell your brain that you are full. Easiest one in the world is like a sugar-free gum, like get a minty taste of gum and immediately it's, you're not going to want to put like a sweet something in your mouth after you have that minty taste. Tea, hot tea, coffee, anything that's going to take you a long time to sip, anything that's going to change the taste in your mouth, brushing your teeth. One of the things I say, coming back to your question about how to not eat at night, after dinner, when you're in front of the TV, have some dental floss sitting there at the stand next to your television remote and floss your teeth. I did this religiously when I was first changing my eating habits. I hate flossing. It's really uncomfortable, but I'm just sitting there not doing anything, right? But once you're done flossing your teeth, well, I don't want to dirty them up again by eating something. So it's a great psychological advantage.
There you go. So carry around your dental floss in your pocket while you're watching the television. One final question for you, Dr. Gillaspy. Many people will be familiar with embarking on new regimes for healthy eating and weight loss regimes. They'll have acquired and adopted those healthy habits that we were talking about, but they will plateau. Their confidence will take a hit. What advice would you have for these people in order to help them galvanize themselves again such that they can get back on the straight and narrow once more?
Sometimes it requires not doing something like weighing yourself every day. There's two philosophies on that, right? So there's I want to see that I'm making progress every day, and then there's the reality that our body holds water different times for reasons that we can't explain because it needs to retain water for something going on. So sometimes, in order to keep going, we need to put our trust in our plan and wait for those results. In my programs, a lot of times I'll use 40-day diet cycles for that reason. Stick with the goal, stick with the plan, stay dedicated to the plan, and the results will come. But give yourself a short-term goal like that. You can use 40 days, you can use 30 days, you could use 21 days, whatever works for you. So set those short-term goals. Don't get too caught up in the bathroom scale. By all means, utilize it, but don't get too caught up in what it's saying. And give yourself some grace. We do live in a sugar-filled world. It's not always fun when other people are having things. But you will make so much progress if you just dedicate to doing your plan consecutively for a month, 40 days. You'll make so much progress and you'll be so happy with yourself. So just keep your mindset on that, and that's the way to do it.
If people want to find out more about you and your programs and your books, etc., where can they go online?
Dr. Becky Fitness is the name of my website, so they could go there. They can also find me on YouTube, Becky Gillaspy. Just plug that in and look for this face, and you'll find me. So,
well, I'll pop a link to your YouTube channel and to your website in the show notes for this episode. But for the moment, Dr. Becky Gillaspy, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Happy Habit Podcast. If you enjoyed it and would like to show your support, it's free. You can like, subscribe, and tell other people all about this podcast. Until next time, stay happy.
Bye.